Jeremy, you have reported that Mitch McConnell is going to continue humoring Donald Trump, along with other Republicans humoring Donald Trump, so long as he thinks it's necessary to help in those two special elections in Georgia, because the last thing McConnell wants is for Republicans in Georgia to think that Washington Republicans abandoned the president. Tell us about it.
Well, I think it's pretty simple. If you look at Mitch McConnell's record and everything he's done with his power, it has been all about preserving Republicans' Senate majority. And the last thing that Republicans want right now is a deflated base in Georgia, thinking that the Republicans in Washington aren't fighting hard enough for President Trump. And it's really just a nakedly political calculation here. The other aspect is that there's not a lot of feeling inside the Senate Republican Conference that Donald Trump cares all that much, if at all, about this Georgia Senate seat. I mean, it doesn't really have anything to do with him. It doesn't have anything to do with his legacy. And especially if Georgia is one of those places that ends up voting against him in the presidential race. I mean, you can imagine the president is going to feel very bitter and not going to want to help out at all or go back there and campaign. So part of what this is signaling among Republicans, coming straight from the top with McConnell that, Mr. President, we have your back. And I think that more than anything else, Joe, is a sign that this Republican Party is very much still within this president's grip. And it will be for some time because the Republicans really just are not able at the moment to untangle themselves from the man and this movement that is very likely to dictate their political future for years to come, absent some other kind of leader come along.
Right. And as you point out, owning the libs has become a very lucrative industry, not only in media, but owning the libs has also become a great way for Republican candidates to raise a lot of money. So whether it's bad for America, whether it hurts America's national security, whether it makes a transition a bit more dangerous, whether it makes things more difficult for Joe Biden when he becomes commander in chief, well, that's right now taking second place to Mitch McConnell and the Republican Party's strategy of, quote, owning the libs to see what they can get out of it over the next 20 or 30 days. And I guess America's national security be damned. But, Kurt, owning the libs was a very effective campaigning strategy in 2020. If you look at the House races, we finally got verification that the Democrats are, in fact, going to be the majority party in the House of Representatives. But, this was one of the most shocking, I think, for Republicans and Democrats alike. I mean, people in Kevin McCarthy's office were talking about the week before, talking about how bad their polling was in the suburbs, and they thought they were going to get slaughtered. So this was one of the most surprising outcomes in House races that I've seen since 1998, when Republicans were supposed to pick up a bunch of seats and ended up with a bare 4-seat majority. What happened?
Well, I mean, it's really something, Joe, because leading up to the election, the conversation was, will Kevin McCarthy even be able to stay Republican leader, because they were expecting such a disastrous performance in the November election. And now the mood in Washington and amongst the Republican conference as well. Speaker McCarthy is within reach 2 years from now in the 2022 midterms based on how they overperformed. So again, this reminds me so much of what the atmosphere was like when we had the transition from W to Obama, and then 2 years later, House Republicans took back the majority and effectively legislatively ended the Obama presidency by taking control of Congress, and they never looked back. And I expect to see a repeat of that the way things are going right now, that Republicans in Congress are going to focus solely on doing everything they can to make the Biden White House miserable, to use the levers of power that they have to try to derail every single measure that the Biden administration puts out there in the hopes that it puts them in the position to take back the majority in 2022. This is such a hyper-politicized environment. It's actually worse for Biden, frankly, than it was for Obama, because at least when Obama was in office, he had people like John Boehner, who wanted to make deals, Paul Ryan, who was considered establishment at the time. There wasn't this turn to Trumpism that we're seeing right now. People like Jim Jordan, who are now power brokers in the Republican conference, they were considered the fringe back when Obama was president. Now he's one of the leaders of the Republican Party in the House. And so it's such a challenging environment, and I think Republicans right now feel optimistic about their chances to take back the House. And all the while, Democrats right now are busy shooting at each other. You have the AOC squad going off against moderates like Abigail Spanguter and Speaker Pelosi trying to stay above the fray. Let me tell you something. If Democrats spend this time fighting each other, they are going to lose the House in 2022.
Aaron Haynes, let me ask you about the state of Georgia. You are a native of that great state. The stakes are obviously high for Republicans, and that's why we're seeing Mitch McConnell sort of lay out and try to keep the base fired up and not come out and declare Joe Biden the winner. That's part of his logic anyway. We've seen the two senators there, Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, call for the resignation of the Secretary of State, a Republican. He has said he's not going to do that. Georgia's lieutenant governor yesterday, also a Republican, said, yeah, there hasn't been any fraud in this election. And yet they persist. So what are the stakes as we look at the candidates there, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, Reverend Raphael Warnock, that the polls are very close here, obviously. We got a first AJC poll yesterday. It's close. The stakes, we talk about it in terms of Republicans, but for Democrats, my goodness, if they win those two races, it changes everything for President-elect Biden.
Absolutely, Willie, and the stakes could not be higher in Georgia. Listen, I'm from Atlanta. Atlanta is used to runoffs. They have runoffs usually every 4 years in the mayor's race, right? But it's the rest of the state that is going to have to stay energized. And I think that both sides, now that Georgia is enjoying its newfound swagger as a battleground state, will be looking to make a statement as all eyes turn towards the Peach State over the next several weeks.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.